didn't exist.
That's too bad for you, Richard.
That's the last time you'll mess with old Turkey Head.
Turkey Head's coming for you, Ranger.
Why'd you gotta come in with a turkey head? It's not exactly fair, is it?
Ranger danger! Ranger danger!
Oh my God! Everybody!
The only thing I fear is butterballs.
Wow. Hello everyone.
We're having the most based conversation here.
Oh, God.
Yeah, welcome
We're gonna stuff the next hour with bad accents in Uruk-talk.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's what happens. It puts on the turkey head and it just goes from there.
It explodes.
Oh wait. Turkey Head's been promoted, Ranger.
This is what everybody showed up for. This is welcome everybody to the Joystiq.
Wait, one more.
Oh, God.
No. Because remember, when the captains come in, or the not the captains.
Right. Yeah. No. The war chiefs.
Oh, the war chiefs come in. They've got that chant. So I've got Turkey Head, Turkey Head.
Welcome to Joystiq's Roundtable discussion of Shadow of Mordor, everyone. We are talking about this week's, one of the two big releases this week. We're not talking about the game where dogs slap princesses across the face using ducks. We're talking about Monolith and Warner Brother Interactive Entertainment's game Shadow of Mordor, Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor, an open-world sandbox adventure that takes place between The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, wherein you play a fallen ranger of Gondor as he wanders around the forsaken land of Mordor. He does, in fact, just walk into Mordor, to be perfectly honest, and goes around seeking revenge on the generals in Sauron's army. Talking about Shadow of Mordor today is myself. I'm Anthony John Agnello, Joystiq Community Manager, and with me today are a roving band of Joystiq Uruks who have been playing the game. We have Alexander Slewinski, News Content Director, who actually reviewed Shadow of Mordor, although I think Alexander has been promoted within our army.
Yes, thank you.
We also have Ernest Cavalli, resurrected from the dead, everybody. He is here with us, recovering from surgery, but he still wanted to talk about Shadow of Mordor, so hi, Nex.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, not even having my body cut open and into pieces could keep me from discussing how A, horrible Tolkien is, but how B, great the game based on Tolkien is.
We also have...
Next.
Yes?
You possessed by an elven smith.
Okay.
Is you possessed by an Evan Smith?
Evan Smith?
And Evan Smith...
Is Evan Smith...
Kevin Smith?
Kevin Smith is possessing you.
Yeah, so you get possessed...
The way Alexander's possessed by Kevin Smith, I think, maybe.
Is you possessed by Kevin Smith? I didn't like him too much after chasing Amy. There was a film starring Ben Affleck making love to an orc. No. She was actually a lovely woman.
By orc, you mean lesbian?
A Gilioc. No, that's chasing Amy.
That's chasing Amy. We have Zav D'Amatos, our features content director. Hi, Zav.
Hi. I also don't like Tolkien, but this game is pretty good.
and Mr. Richard Mitchell, our reviews content director, who was streaming Shadow of Mordor for us earlier this week.
Yes. I feel that Clerks 2 was vastly inferior to the first.
But a fine film in its own right!
God, this Karagor can climb? I didn't know they could climb. I'm playing the game right now. Oh, don't die, don't die.
Yeah,
yeah,
so
hi, everybody.
a common theme that has already emerged here is the fact that all of us are not exactly Tolkien fans. We are not.
I like Tolkien.
You liked. Well, I mean, what you're not
The
like.
token Tolkien.
In fact, you keep talking. I'll be right back.
Yeah, but like, I don't think Richard is exactly like freaking Salman Rushdie who speaks Elvish or anything like that. He's not that intensely devoted to it.
Right.
But what's so impressive about Shadow of Mordor is the fact that it doesn't seem to require a real love of Tolkien in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, not at all. Like I was saying earlier, I hate Tolkien. I find his writing to be... The dude is in love with words, right? Which makes sense because he's a linguist. But as a result, all of his text is overly flowery and masturbatory. And I say that as a guy who's a massive egotist whose text is overly flowery and masturbatory.
Masturbator.
But you know, despite my hatred for Tolkien's, you know, long-windedness, Mordor's great. The story is unlike Tolkien's writing, and that's awesome.
Well, I mean, you know that Tolkien didn't write it, right?
Yes.
Whoa,
yes.
whoa. Roll back. J.R.R. Tolkien, the man so nice they named him thrice, did not write this
No.
game.
No.
Oh,
They didn't even make like a Tolkien hologram and have him write it. Like, but what I was gonna say before I sat on my headset is
You got a rage.
squash, whatever they say. I don't know. Yeah.
They say squash, pumpkin, squash.
Pumpkin spice latte, squash.
And he even has this a little dagger, little Morgul blade.
Excellent.
Does it disintegrate when you stab somebody with it? That probably wouldn't be. That's going to fester forever, and Sean Astin is going to have to take care of you until you go on a boat.
Man, you talk about, you know, I know Nex was talking about Tolkien's love for words, masturbatory, whatever. Take a listen to the Lord of the Rings commentary sometime, and listen to how highly Sean Astin thinks of himself.
Really?
Dude's been in like 6 movies, but he talks like he's like an Oscar winner.
Well, Encino Man is one of the great works of our time.
Hey,
Wait a second.
Rudy
What about
can
Toy
say whatever
Soldiers?
he wants. You leave Rudy alone. Toy Soldiers is actually really... No one remembers Toy Soldiers. Let's just do a podcast about Toy Soldiers. That was an amazing
How
movie.
is nobody
He was
mentioned the
also in Toy
Goonies?
Soldiers, and his father in Toy Soldiers was Lenny Briscoe from Law and Order.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that guy.
Jerry Orbach?
Jerry
Briscoe
Orbach,
County
yes.
Yeah.
Jerry Orbach was everybody's parent between the years of 1985 and 1990.
Yeah.
Just across the board, nobody puts
And
Baby in a
Anthony-
corner.
and Anthony
Nobody puts
killed
Sean Astin in a corner.
Anthony, it killed him. Jerry, it just killed him.
Just
in the end.
it ruined him.
It
All
ruined
right. So, last thing we're gonna say about Jerry Orbach all over New York City for donating your organs. And apparently Jerry Orbach died an organ donor, and there are these posters that you see all over town that say, 2 New Yorkers have Jerry Orbach's eyes.
That's creepy.
Right? Anyways,
Wow.
you're
Which
also...
makes them collectively the greatest detective in the world.
They're
That's a
Batman
sitcom
now.
right there. They have to meet up.
They just like cover one eye and then it turns on detective mode.
Mm-hmm.
Zev, why are you into Shadow of Mordor, even though you don't like Tolkien?
I'm more into it for the action. We'll get into it, but there's some story beats in it where one of the questions I asked everyone was, do I need to know about Lord of the Rings in order to enjoy the story of this game? And everyone said no, but there is a story beat in this game where they make a reveal.
Mm.
And they reveal it, and it's like this dun 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 like moment, and you're like, and I honestly was like, I have no idea what just happened. Like, what is that a thing? And like, it just sounds like another myth, the Tolkien verse. And eventually, after a couple of minutes, they explain why that's important, which I'm really glad they did because I would have been very confused. But yeah, like Nex, I find his writing to be overwrought, and I don't like that universe. I'm also not a fantasy fan in that sense either.
But the game
part of it. But I like the
game works for you. Like it draws you in. You're into it. I like that. Part of the reason I've been telling people that you really don't need to have any kind of Tolkien love for this at all is part of why the game is actually very good across the board. Like even if it wasn't licensed, if this was just its own thing, this would still be a good part of it. Is the fact that it just drops you in. Like, there is no drawn-out 10-minute-long cutscene being like, once upon a time in this grand land of volcanoes and pig wolves, this thing happened. None of that happens, and there's no drawn-out tutorial. It's, you're a guy, you have this sword, boom, now you're dead. And now you're alive again because you've been banished from death. And then it just throws you out there to go find out what the hell's going on.
Like, the Peter Jackson thing where like it starts off with like the black screen and the lady talking in a high fashion like that. They did kind of do that, and I wish that didn't have to be like, this is how we introduce Lord of the Rings properties now, because Peter Jackson did it that one time.
Right. Everything needs to start out with like a somber
Kate Blanchett voiceover.
Yeah, Kate Blanchett voiceover.
And like that's no joke. Like whoever they got, I don't know if she was supposed to be Galadriel or not, but it was very clearly someone trying to sound like her.
I thought it was Kate Blanchett.
Yeah.
Really? Like the guy who does Gollum sounds exactly like
sounds
Andy
pretty good.
Serkis.
I thought it was Andy Serkis.
I was legitimately convinced he was.
Yeah. No,
That's like a secret.
it's not.
Wow.
I actually thought that it was possible because he's done a lot of video game work.
Yeah. Well, whoever they got does an amazing Andy Serkis impression.
Mm-hmm.
Like across the board. I mean, the voice acting is really, really good. The writing is really, really good, and the writing is good in a lot of ways because it's not exactly like Tolkien. It's not really florid most of the time. It's very direct, to the point. It's very blunt. When Talion, the hero of this game, is first meeting in the game's opening moments. Spoiler warning, everybody. Yeah, Talion dies. He beefs it right in the first second, and when he is having this horrific confrontation against Sauron's generals, including like the big bad of them, like the Hand of Sauron. That scene is really, really effective and really, really scary and far more gruesome and shocking than anything you see in those movies. And it really speaks to the tone and quality of everything that follows it. Alexander, when the night that you started playing, you and I were talking, and you said, this actually makes Tolkien cool for me.
Yep.
So
it makes Tolkien cool. Like it's well executed. It's like taking Star Wars away from George Lucas.
Yeah. See, but
that's a great analogy.
But why? Like, why is this so cool? Why is what's happening? Why did it grip you so much? You gave this game a perfect score.
Well, let's be clear that the way Joystiq's score system works is based on fun.
Thank you for saying that, and so I didn't have to.
Yeah.
Right.
Joystiq's review system is based on fun, and in the question of whether or not one should play this. Like,
it's perfectly fun.
Perfectly fun.
The game is perfectly fun. Like, yes, you should absolutely play Shadow of Mordor. Like, there's no reason that if you enjoy the video games that you would not partake in the Shadow of Mordor. But as to why it makes it cool, I mean, that's starting to ask me, like, how do I explain, like, Michael Bayham? Like, I have no idea. Like, it's camera shots, it's angles. I have no idea. But does it seem overwrought that you need to know the world of like, you can tell when a game is trying so hard to do fan service. Like Arkham City is a perfect example of it. Like Arkham Asylum is great. Like you don't really need to know Batman to enjoy that game and just go with it. Whereas
Because
Arkham
it's small.
City, right? You know, it was very focused. It was very direct. Like Arkham Asylum knew what it was doing. By the time Arkham City comes along, like Arkham City has a new like member of the Rogue Gallery show up. What, every 5 minutes, maybe
At least.
10 if you're lucky, and it just gets so in the way of things. Whereas Shadow of Mordor does not get in its own way. Like, do you know that there's one ring that rules them all? Yes, cool, good to go. Do you have a basic concept of who Gollum is? Yes, okay, awesome, good to go. That's pretty much it. Then all you need to know is that like Mordor is a bad place.
Yeah. And it doesn't.
The barriers to entry are very low.
It doesn't
That's why
introduce a lot
people
of
can't
characters.
simply walk into Mordor because there are so many barriers.
Ah,
Right.
it doesn't have. It's not something that I think that makes Lord of the Rings kind of exhausting for a lot of people. Is the like hundreds of ancillary characters that you're supposed to constantly know and remember and understand their significance in this world. And Shadow of Mordor has a very, very small contained cast of good guys, of allies, but it has this vast cast of villains that are different for everybody who plays as they play the game. And I think part of what makes it so great is that it introduces all of these characters to you as you're playing, and you get to know them in a very, very natural way, and it never feels overwhelming in a way that like Arkham City does. And those are the captains, those are the war chiefs that give this game all of its flavor. Boom Boom Turkey Head, which is the worst war chief name I think I could have come up with at that moment.
Well,
Richard, where are you right now in the game? Everybody can see Richard playing there.
It's
Yeah,
really
I
hard
think-
to tell at 10 frames per second.
I'm still like 10%. I just finished like the first. I met Gollum and finished that first story mission, where you meet him. But that's it thus far.
Hey, Alexander, what platform did you play it on for the review?
PlayStation 4.
I've been playing it on PC, and with the... I'm sure it looks great on PS4, but with the HD textures on PC, oh my god. This game is pretty, guys.
No. The detail work on the Uruk is stunning to begin with. So, like, I'm sure with your HD textures put in there, it looks even better. But make no mistake, like, those creatures look amazing. Like,
The
just...
environment looks good, too.
Yeah,
Can I ask, like, are you guys making progress in the story? Because I've done one story mission, and the other 10 hours of gameplay has just been roaming around killing dudes because it's so fun.
So that's a funny thing, because I've noticed one of the things that I was sort of concerned about was the ability for people to just bang through the story missions and ignore the Nemesis system, and therefore, like, the game could theoretically, get into like the 10 to 12 hour range. Like, that's not going to happen if you're playing the game and trying to level up, because also the combat system you're either really adept at that style of combat, or you're not. Like Richard the other day was playing it on the stream, and he's very good at the Batman combat system.
I just finished the kill 50 guys in one go challenge before this call.
Whoa!
And I also got the reached a 100 combo streak bonus objective. And I feel pretty
So
good
yes,
about it.
Richard is very good at video games.
Richard is very good at video games.
So there are certainly folks that I've seen, developers I've been following on Twitter who are also playing Shadow of Mordor, and they're 20 hours into it, and they haven't even left the first section yet. So there is a wide variety of where you're going to end up in doing the story missions and having fun with the Nemesis system and getting through the story.
Yeah, I've
what's
been
great?
playing it for 8 hours now, I think, because it tells you how long you've been playing the game. And I had returned to it one day, and it said that I was at 17%. And I was like, there's no way. I thought I did so much more than this, but that's one thing that I don't like about the game, though, is that there's so much variety and everything is so kind of spread out that it doesn't. This is a pro and a con. It doesn't really push you to do anything in particular. So it's a very open-ended game where you can just go and do whatever you want, but it also doesn't entice you to go do anything at any point. So I feel like it could be better at reminding me of what's happening in the story. The fear that I have is that I'm going to play it for so long that I'm going to end up making every enemy so powerful that when I turn to the story missions, it's going to be impossible for me to defeat them. Because I've died a couple of times, and every time you die, pretty much everyone gets promoted and almost all of the dead orcs get replaced. And once you start dying and everyone's already alive, you end up promoting the war chiefs. So they're like level 15, 16, 17, and it's really difficult to sort of compete with that. So it sort of puts me in a spot of like, well, I don't want to stop exploring because I like that part of it, but if I don't stop exploring, I'm going to have a hell of a time defeating these guys.
It's really funny. I had very much the same concern when I started playing Zav. And rather than, I said to myself, well, I'm just going to stick with the story for a little while, and then when I get to that point where everything is opened up, I've gone to all the towers, I know what all the missions are that are available in the area before going on to like the big critical path things that'll open up the second half of the game. I'm just going to see what all that is like. And what I found, and you'll find this if you push further into the story missions, like play like the first 5 or 6. The game's story does a spectacular job of integrating all of its best aspects, like the pursuit of just running around, killing guys for fun, is seamlessly woven into the story. So that if you take on a story mission, say you have to go to a stronghold to find this one war chief, you might end up there, and then 3 of the sub-captains who you need to hunt down in other submissions may well be there in that fort at the same time, just randomly, because they were there in the world. That's the way it built it. And the game's story is built to give you everything that you would get if you just want to run around and kill everything at the same time.
But see, the other thing about this game that I appreciate is its pacing. That you can either fast travel through the towers, or you can fast travel using the Spirit Arrow body warp stuff, and that'll get you around the world really, really fast, which is great if you're an adult and you don't have that much time to spend. So, like for me, I think I certainly made my way through the game at a clip that would not be considered letting everything breathe. And it still took me like in the 20-hour range to get there. So there is plenty of content in there, even if you are the type of person who doesn't like to waste time, just doing because you certainly do need to do some of the side stuff because you need the powers to get through particular sections, unless of course again you're Richard and you can just get through anything.
Well, I mean, I will echo the same sentiment that I have been playing for a while, and I find myself avoiding the story stuff just because it takes longer. So I'm like getting into the game and I'm just playing a little bit just to have some fun for a little bit. And I'm like, I could do a story mission. Like I thought about doing one a minute ago, but I was like, no, I'm going to be on this call, so I'm probably not going to do that. Mm-hmm. But Ludwig said this during our podcast, and what I think is really this game does really well is all of these objectives and things that you can do are directly tied to like the central conceit of the game, which is like killing these captains. And there are so many open world games where all these side missions, all these activities that you can do, I guess it's kind of boring to watch this frozen screen, all the activities you can do they're like peripheral. It's like in this game when I'm going to collect flowers or whatever as a tiny side mission, it's because it'll heal me, or I'm going to interrupt this power struggle because it will affect the makeup of the Uruk army. Whereas in like Assassin's Creed or whatever, it's like I'm getting feathers for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like
Feather or dancing, or you're finding the dancing note, the note paper that's
Right.
running through the trees that you have to run after.
At least that is like a platforming challenge, right? So, and the platforming in Assassin's Creed is fun, but like in this game, like all of the side missions, all these extra things you can do, are like intrinsically fun. They don't feel like they were just put in there to make the game longer.
Oh, and Dinky Doo asks, do you think this will become a franchise?
Yup.
Yeah, and absolutely. Like I'm glad that Warner Brothers seems to be setting themselves up into a situation where they're like, well, Batman's not going to be annual. Let's not ever do that. Let's have something else that is going to sit there and be another, nice big fat tent pole that we can filter in every other year, every 2 years or so, and bring it back. And I love that. I love that Shadow of Mordor ends in a way that leaves it open to go to a lot of different places and exciting places.
Exciting places. That's the thing about it, is that it concludes in a way that is exciting, and that's always great. Like like Tomb Raider, the reboot of Tomb Raider, puts Lara through that entire experience, and that it ends in exactly this way that you're like, okay, I'm very ready to see what happens next. And then the reintroduction of her at E3 this year, being in the psychologist's office, like fits in perfectly with the new world that they're building for her.
Yeah.
Well, and we've talked about this a little bit before in other discussions, but yes, Shadows of Mordor is definitely going to be a franchise. They're going to do something with it, but Monolith at this point is kind of building a reputation for making these licensed games that are pretty decent. This is not their first Lord of the Rings game, but imagine something like Shadows of Gotham, or Shadow of whatever other properties Warner Brother has. Like, I think they could apply this formula into other games pretty easily. I don't think they will, at least not overtly. I don't think we're going to see a game called Shadow of Gotham or anything. But
what about Shadow of Lollipop Chainsaw, another WB property there?
Don't remind me of that game.
I mean, it all hinges on whether or not this game sells really well. I mean, if this ends up being a disaster commercially, then you're not going to see another one.
Critically, it's doing really well, but that does not guarantee success.
Well, it's not just critical interest. There is a really impressive amount of interest. Just people like reading our articles about Shadow of Mordor.
I think it's because everyone's surprised.
Yeah, everyone's surprised. There is a lot of buzz around this game that is not just people who are obsessed with games. Like
or Tolkien.
Yeah, I was at GameStop just a couple of days ago, and
why would you do that to yourself?
Because it's right around the corner from my place.
Signing up for that credit card, Gotta build that good credit.
Yeah, I had to show up, and I wanted to trade in my Nintendo 64. No, that never happened.
The way I'm looking at it is
people were there talking about it.
The way I'm looking at it is that the amount of attention that our review got, it wasn't the standard like people were reading it for a couple days after the game came out. I mean, it's still doing really, really well, which means there's plenty of attention on this game.
Well, I think it came out at the right time of year. Yeah, Smash Brothers, like, I was surprised too. Like, not a lot of comments on that review. I haven't looked at the page numbers or anything, but it's just like, I think everyone's surprised that this game came out of nowhere. Any game that you see that maybe you haven't been paying attention to, and all of a sudden there's like really high review scores everywhere, and everyone's like, you gotta play this. I think this word of mouth is going to be really big on this game.
Yeah, and I think earlier this year, when Ludwig and Alexander were coming out of early previews for Shadow of Mordor, both of you were just so excited by what Monolith was showing you the first times that it was public.
No, I've said it on the podcast before, and and brought it up before, but it is you know, Richard also has made sure that it is one of the few games that I actually spent an hour playing at E3. Like, my time is precious at E3. Like, I don't spend 15 minutes with something at E3. And there I was playing Mordor for an hour. And you know, Richard has said before that the only time before that sort of happened was XCOM.
Yeah.
So, you know, it is a very rare moment, and also a very rare moment for a publisher to have the type of confidence in a game that they will let you play it for an hour, because most of the time it's what's called a vertical slice, and you get like maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, and it's like, okay, thanks, bye, get out. Whereas when they let you play with it for an hour, or, you know, sort of like, oh, well, you know, if you want to keep going, you can keep going. It's like, oh, okay, I'll keep going.
Now, did you have anyone like hovering over your shoulder while you played it, or did they just let you at it?
I mean, I obviously had a representative from the publisher like over my shoulder, but, you know, he was just sort of, you know, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me, because for the most part he could tell that I had played Batman before, so I was doing okay with the combat, and you know, I know how to read a button prompt, so I was doing okay.
Not only did Alexander play for an hour, throughout the rest of E3, he wouldn't shut up about this game. Like, everything. We're going to get drinks, and he's just like, have you guys heard about Shadow of Mordor? I know I told you about it 15 minutes ago, but it's so good.
Yeah,
and honestly, I thought you were being hyperbolic. And even in your review, I thought you were being hyperbolic until I played the game, and I was like, wow, yeah, really that good.
Alexander, the comparison you made at the time was, you were like, this is going to blow up like Dishonored. And
no, I said it's this year's Arkham. I said it was this year's Arkham, because Arkham is the other game that came out of nowhere, where everyone was making fun of, oh, Unreal Engine 3 Batman, like, he looks so beefy and stupid, and look at, you know, Commissioner Gordon, like, Commissioner Gordon's on steroids, and, you know, that was sort of the narrative of Arkham Asylum until those first, you know, like the first reviews really came out, and people started playing it, and it's like, oh wait, no, this is, forget Batman. Like, I mean, it's like this with Lord of the Rings. It's like, forget Lord of the Rings. This has nothing to do with Batman. It has nothing to do with Lord of the Rings. Like, this is a good game just on its own merits.
Yeah, and something that is going to be imitated very quickly.
Hopefully.
Like, yeah, and somebody is going to come out and say, all right, well, we need to make the enemies game now. We need to make the game where you're taking care of this army. And I'm not sure who's going to do it first, but this in 18 months you're going to see a game that apes this.
Let's lay that out for everyone, because you know, we've been talking about this because we played it, but a lot of people have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah. What's the next system, Alexander? Please explain.
No, you go ahead and explain it.
Okay,
yeah, everybody's already heard Alexander's.
Alexander's tired of explaining the Nemesis system to everyone.
I'm tired of it. I tried to explain it during our E3 podcast and failed miserably, and then I had to sit down and write the review and explain it in the review, and that was the trying to explain a new system is incredibly difficult. So go ahead, Ernest.
Okay, fine. Okay, so the situation, we call this the Nemesis system, and you have this army of orcs, okay? The vast majority of your enemies in the game are orcs. The orcs are led by orcish captains, and the captains are led by, are they generals? Even higher captains? War chiefs, right. Okay, so you've got this screen that you'll keep coming back to that displays all of the captains and all of the war chiefs, and once you've collected intel on a captain or a war chief, you can find out, you know, their likes, their dislikes, if they enjoy long walks on the beach, that kind of thing. And this allows you to not only figure out where they are on the map, but then hunt them down and use their likes and dislikes against them. Say if an orc is terrified of giant predatory cats. The neat bit about the Nemesis system, though, is that all of these traits are generated semi-randomly, and the orcs themselves interact within their ranks. So you might have one orc who hates another orc and decides to have a duel with him, and so on your map there will be this duel that you can go and you can observe the duel and wait for one of the orcs to kill the other one, or you can kill whichever one you prefer, and then their ranks will change. The captain that killed the one orc will become A, more powerful, and B, might take that orc's position in the orcish hierarchy. The result of this is a game that has enemies that are fluid and ever-changing, and it adds more, not gravitas, but there's more importance to the random mooks you're killing, because at any time, depending on your actions, some random orc who you lit on fire who happened to run away before you could kill him might become the next super powerful captain that you have to hunt down. I haven't gotten far enough in the story to build my own army, so somebody else is going to have to cover that.
Well, let's put it this way: how they aren't just random mooks. Like, tell me the name of your nemesis, like the orc the name of, because he's been a pain in your butt.
I think mine's a Moog at the moment, because I killed my last one last night.
A Moog the what?
I want to say Slaver. I think.
Okay. Yeah, I know mine was Longtooth. I remember mine being Longtooth, and he was an archer, and he was a pain.
Right.
I have one that's named Gorgog the Whiner.
Yeah, I hated that the guy who was my nemesis was named Norak the Coward. I was like,
that
the
is
coward.
demoralizing.
Like, come on, man! He just keeps coming back to life. And then insulting me, being like, "You're not gonna run away this time, are you, Rage?" I'm like, "You dick."
I have a question for Alexander since he's finished it. In terms of, so I'm in the part of the game where you have to now go after the war chiefs, and there's 5 war chiefs, and then there's a part of the game where you have to kill them. And my concern is this: that I'm on my way to go kill a war chief, and then on my way there, I inevitably pass by like 17 captains and have to fight them all, and then die, and they all get promoted. But let's say I were to go and kill a war chief, and then go and fight a captain, and he dies. Does he now take the place of a war chief that I've killed, and now I have to kill an extra war chief?
Not necessarily. Yeah, not necessarily. That is spoiler territory, but not necessarily. It is, Zav, you're only at the end of the first half.
Yeah, you're not even halfway.
Not
through
even
17%, man. I'm a 17% guy right here.
And so what happens to sort of address that without giving away too much is the game does put in little limiters to prevent you from facing this endless horde of people that are upgrading, and also. After that, after you take out those initial gang of war chiefs, the entire flow of the game changes. Yeah. So everything you've been doing up to that point sort of meets a nice conclusion and then turns into something else. And you're doing something very, very differently when interacting with Sauron's army.
Yeah, my initial concern with the game was I was actually worried that because when we saw it in previews, we only saw that first section. So I thought that was the end of the game, and I got there, like I said, I was going at a pretty decent clip, so about 8 hours. And I thought that was going to be the end, and I was just like, oh, no, please don't do this, please. Oh, I don't want to write this review now. And it's like, nope, that's not the end. So you are actually, the second half of the game is strategically very different than the first half. So you're going fine. You're flowing okay.
Alexander, Oh, go ahead next.
Before we continue, Dinky Doo in the comments wanted us to point out that the all of this discussion that we've been having is focused on the PC, Xbox One, and PlayStation 4 versions of the game, because the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 versions have a neutered version of the Nemesis system, so a lot of the stuff we're discussing you won't see in those older versions.
So has that been confirmed? Do we know that for sure? Because
there's not the same Nemesis system.
it's not the same Nemesis system. They've detailed how it works. Because at this point, we just don't know. The PS3 and Xbox 360 versions have never been publicly shown, and they're still a month and a half away.
Right.
And I mean, I know that they've talked about there being some differences, but I haven't seen an official statement from Monolith at this point that's just like, this is the concrete, absolute, tangible difference between the way the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC version works and the one on the older consoles. So, right now, it's a lot of people have asked us, oh, what's your opinion on the PS3 and 360 version? We don't know.
You don't have it.
We don't know. We don't have the game.
I have a quote from the developers, though.
All right.
How that's going to go. It says, we're very focused on the place. This is from design director Michael Duplant speaking to IGN. We're very focused on the PS4 and Xbox One. We're focusing on the next-gen platforms and then going to do whatever we can to get as much as possible on current-gen. To break it down, some of the stuff we're pretty confident will still be in the current-gen. The core mechanics like combat, stealth, ranged, and movements, the basic control and gameplay, that should all be really solid. What it won't have is the same level of depth and variety and simulation within the Nemesis system. The story will be the same and the core gameplay will be the same, but the Nemesis system is just so huge in terms of contents, calculations, and AI, we'll just have to try and get as much of it as we can in.
So even they don't know. That's a vague statement. That
Right.
is, who knows what that means? And Lord Mugen here in the chat is saying, usually it's a bad sign if, this version of the game isn't even being shown. Sometimes that's true. Other times, it's a business consideration. Nobody anywhere saw the Xbox 360 version of Titanfall before that came out about a month after the initial version of Titanfall on Xbox One and PC. And the only reason that nobody saw the Xbox 360 version was that EA, Microsoft, and Respawn wanted to be pushing the next-gen version. This was a flagship title. They want all their sales there. Everybody has a vested interest in the success of the future version, and the old one's just going to be gravy. And that game turned out to be fine. The Xbox 360 version of Titanfall, perfectly functional, perfectly good game, and the same might end up being the case with Shadow of Mordor. But
Papa Kadush says, can you please explain the mind control element in the game? Could you effectively beat the game without killing a war chief, rather have someone else do it?
Good question.
Yup.
Yeah, spoilers.
Okay, but I have a question about that specifically because I don't have that ability yet. So is that something that I'll get after this initial war chief part that I'm doing?
That's why I'm saying, the second half of the game is very different than the first half. So get the first half of the game, and then the second half introduces a ton of other stuff.
Would you say that I'm sort of wasting my time by not getting past that point? Would it be
No,
better
if you're
for me to
enjoying
get-
yourself,
Okay.
keep enjoying yourself. There's no rush. Collect the stuff. Do the side missions, do all that stuff. If you're having a good time, enjoy having a good time.
There is something about that is actually worth noting, is that the game does lock off certain things you can do, like the mind control element, behind the story. And some of them seem fairly small. From the beginning, there are monsters that are wandering around the land called Caragors. They're these sorts of pig, bear, wolf hybrid things. And many of the war chiefs are afraid of them, but some of them use them as weapons and get even more powered up if there's a Caragor nearby. You can, from the start of the game, ride a Caragor. You can get on top of it and ride it around and use it for whatever you want, traveling, scaring a war chief, whatever. Later in the game, well into the second half of the game, you learn finally how to counter their attacks, the most basic move in the world. But you can't do it until you get to that part of the story. And the mind control is an element of that. The fast travel stuff where you can just sort of whoosh across the screen, like Alexander was talking about. That stuff is locked behind story.
I just got that ability, the using the elf arrow to use that ability.
Yeah.
And you have to actually unlock the ability to ride them as well. But the thing that
but that's not a story lock. You just have to use one of your upgrades. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder, Do you end up getting more of the in-game currency? Because I feel like the three big special moves that you have each cost 2,500, whatever the point system. Miriam, all right. Helen Mirren. So, does the game dole that out a little bit more? You know, they'd be stingy on purpose. I noticed that each tier of power, it's really tied to the story, so it does sort of gate you by making you do story missions in order to unlock some of those special abilities. Is that how they sort of like, do they dole that out softly and then eventually give you just enough currency to get those abilities, or is that something I'm going to get at the very end of the game when it doesn't matter anymore?
Alexander, do you feel that one?
You could theoretically finish the game without getting to the last line of unlocks.
Yes.
Depending on how you play. But I would say it would be very difficult to get to the end of the game without getting to that fourth row and having, taken on enough captains that you get enough experience points and done enough side missions that you've unlocked a lot of those things.
Yeah. I mean, like Richard being so good at video games will be able to get to the end and finish off like the last fights without I'm pretty sure that you can even get to the final fight without unlocking the second to last tier. I mean, you might do it by accident, but you could feasibly...
I mean, I'm personally, like, I'm focusing on like damage and stuff, because like a lot of games you can upgrade your health, you can upgrade like your stealth kill stuff. I'm upgrading everything that gets me more damage.
Right.
I'm not focusing on giving myself more health or anything like that. So you can certainly play it however it is that you want to do that.
Richard could give us the answer to that very, very quickly, and it's not a spoiler because you can see this in the menu from the start of the game. If you look at the ability tree, the only abilities that are locked out by the story appear in yellow in the ability tree. So there are blue ones that are related to your ghost elf, and red ones that are just based around your ranger skills. And then yellow ones appear locked because they're locked behind story.
Right.
Speaking of Ghost Elf, can I ask a question for Richard specifically, since you seem to be the big Tolkien fan here? Okay, so Celebrimbor, the Ghost Elf guy, he's a character that Tolkien created.
Spoilers, Max.
That's not spoilers. He shows up in 15 seconds into the game.
But you don't know who he is.
But that's the first major reveal.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. I guess the internet spoiled it for me. So sorry, internet, but got you back.
I couldn't tell you who that is, if that's any consolation.
That's
really? He's not in the lore?
He's in Silmarillion. He's deep cuts.
Yeah.
Oh,
And wait, hold on. The dude that made the rings is a deep cut?
They don't ever talk about him in the proper trilogy.
Yeah, he's not in any of the movies.
Hold on. So Tolkien goes on Flower Parade, and he never explains who made the stupid rings?
Nope. No. He's too busy putting all of his other masturbatory work.
So that was the... Oh, boy.
I love that, by the way.
Apparently. That was the thing that happened recently in the game when I was playing it. That was the reveal. I was trying not to spoil it. Thanks, next.
Sorry.
And that was, they said the person's name, and there was like this, oh my god, it's this guy? And I'm like, I have no idea who that is. And then you do a bunch of stuff, and then eventually you exit this cave, and then they explain to you why it matters. So I actually looked up that person's name, and there is a pretty intricate story behind his character in terms of he made the rings, but he also he was commissioned to make these rings, but then he also made some rings for the elves in secret, and he's actually a big part of why the Lord of the Rings, because according to the Wikipedia page that I read, so...
So it's all his fault then.
I did think it was weird that John
So when that was revealed, I actually took it as a pretty great twist, because you can understand why he's a little bit upset. And and after that point, it was like, okay, I understand this guy. I understand where he's coming from, because then there's a bunch of flashbacks and other stuff that goes into more detail. But when I first found out who he was, then it looped back in on, you know, the sort of core narrative of the Lord of the Rings, and it also made sense why he would be a tiny bit upset at Sauron.
Mm.
I do want to apologize to people who are watching that we may have spoiled that for them, and it's not an intentional spoiler, just because we don't. And it's interesting because if you don't know Lord of the Rings, you don't know that's a spoiler. But if you know Lord of the Rings, that is definitely going to be a spoiler for you. So it was unintentional on our part because X and I don't know that that's a big thing.
Tolkien.
Well, I mean,
I'm more confused now because I had no idea that it was never even explained. Like, I thought it was going to be this thing that, like, Lord of the Ring nerds were going to, you know,
Oh well, I mean,
rub Nutella all over themselves over about.
well,
Greg
serious
Tito-
Lord of the Rings fans might, but like, I read the Silmarillion in like 6th grade. I don't remember a lot of it. There were some trees. They made a jewel. Like, I remember that stuff. But I couldn't tell you, like, who...
But
The
it's
jewel is like where
or-
like people came from, right? Like the Silmarillion is all the creation myth.
No, it is literally the god myth of Lord of the Rings. It's like how the
Right.
world was created and who created elves and men and dwarves and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's
It is the Bible of their universe.
Right.
It's an important element in terms of how the series ends up. Like, the purpose of the ring sort of comes from that story and that
Right.
character, and the reason why Sauron needs that ring comes from that character, because, like, according to that lore, it's like he made that one ring. Those rings were commissioned by an elf who was in control of him, and it was made intentionally so Sauron can create this one ring to control everyone who wielded those rings. But
I feel like the cart went off the rails here, guys. We stopped talking about this video game.
We are talking about Tolkien.
Well, I know that, but like,
the story.
But it's
But, like-
appropriate because this is how Tolkien writes things. They just,
Right.
you know, random tangents.
But then after the thing that was confusing to me is, and they don't explain this yet in the game, and hopefully they do. It's that he doesn't know. Okay, so like he doesn't remember these things. So you're sort of like, it's not like he doesn't tell you who he is. It's you're trying to discover this for.
That'll
this
be explained.
person.
Yeah.
And hopefully that'll be
That'll be
so that
explained.
does get explained. But then also another thing that I found out when I was researching it after it happened was the reason why it's important is because he sort of intentionally made these extra rings for the elves because he was an elf, and that's why the ring of power doesn't work as intended. So it's weird. I don't know. Tolkien, I don't know. There's a lot of books. There's a lot of words that have been written about this franchise.
That's fair. But getting back to my original question, Richard. So Celebrimbor exists. Talion, however, the main human ranger guy, he's totally new, right?
as far as I know, yeah, they created him for the game.
Alexander, you got any other ideas?
No, I don't know Lord of the Rings. I've seen the movies. I had to suffer through The Hobbit and the Smog movie.
Oh,
But-
those are awful.
So bad.
Smaug.
I like the second one. It's weird.
Shut up.
It's a weird
Smaug.
movie.
Oh,
It's really, like they spend a whole lot of time in this giant guy's house where there's just like bees all over the place. And
Stop.
it's weird.
Anthony, we've
I'd had
talked
a-
about this.
I'd had a lot of cough syrup when I saw that.
I
movie,
haven't
let me
watched
tell
any
you.
of the Hobbit movies. I kind of checked out of ever wanting to see them when I found out they're splitting into 3, because
Oh,
like
yeah.
the
What are you
Hobbit.
doing?
The Hobbit is shorter than any one book of Lord of the Rings. Like, the Hobbit is not a long book. I don't know how they're going to stretch it into 3.
Well, didn't they bring
Badly.
in some of the other texts too? Like that was the intention.
I don't know.
Yeah, because-
I kind of lost interest in Peter Jackson after King Kong. So
Oh, not after Lovely Bones.
I
haven't seen
love.
it.
I know that there are a lot of like Lord of the Rings friends that are Lord of the Rings fans that are really excited for the 3rd movie because it has the Battle of the 5 Armies, which apparently is the biggest battle.
yeah,
it's
actually,
supposed to be the greatest
that'll be
battle of the entire series. So that should be really interesting.
I don't know about that.
Also, Lord Mugen in chat says they did it for money, which I mean, yeah, clearly.
Yeah,
Money.
but like you don't necessarily need to make something crappy for money. I mean, Shadow of Mordor was made for money. Like somebody was like, "This is a great business proposition," and it just so happens to be excellent. Like
it's
just
all-
because something. Go ahead, Richard.
It's also a McCartney complex where like it doesn't matter what he writes, the producer's like, oh, that song's great, Paul McCartney. So I don't know. But
Excuse me.
the game,
The same
this
guy
game
has
is
produced all Paul McCartney's albums since 1997, and they're
No,
excellent.
We
Yeah,
also
what
call
is
this the J.K. Rowling symptoms post Goblet of Fire.
Jess is gonna be so pissed at you.
No,
No,
he's
Jess,
so
no,
right.
Jess fully recognizes. No. Hold on.
No,
Jess
Andrew.
Condit, who's on our staff, fully recognizes that the Order of the Phoenix is when J.K. Rowling's editor gave up. Was just like,
Dude, Goblet of
Boy.
Fire. Goblet of Fire is 100 pages too friggin' long, and just no editing whatsoever. And Peter Jackson has
they're
these
being
things.
nerdery to Harry Potter.
Yeah, aren't they all?
No, it's definitely it links back to this because Peter Jackson clearly has absolutely no editor, and why
but it
Shadow
doesn't
of
link
Mordor
back to this, Anthony, because we're talking about Peter Jackson on a Shadow of Mordor screen.
Because
So,
Shadow of
the
Mordor
system-
does have great editing.
You see.
Shadow of Mordor is actually a good Middle Earth story because it is actually expertly paced. There is actually editing there. It's well considered.
Oh, God.
As you yourself was saying earlier, Alexander.
Stop it.
Yeah. We are actually near the end of our hour here. You guys want to wrap up with final statements on Shadow of Mordor? I mean, do you have anything to say besides go play this? Because it's
Can I
really,
just
really
bring
good.
up Star Wars now, or are we just talking about any franchise? Or
Yeah, just do it, man.
I can tell you that
Whatever.
I was really worried that this game would be so repetitive that I wouldn't understand like what was driving me to actually go kill all these orcs. Because that was the thing that what I heard when people explained the Nemesis system was, oh, you go kill this orc, and then the other orc gets promoted, and then you go kill that orc, and then it's like you do it over and over and over again, and that's true, but it's like super fun like every time.
Yeah, it's just really hard to explain the system to someone who hasn't played the game.
Well, I mean, I think a good example of it, and I think Zav alluded to this. I'm actually going to stop playing this so I can form coherent thoughts. Is that you could be hunting down one of these captains, and you'll just jump down into the fray, and you won't be paying attention, and you're just swinging around your sword at all these orcs, and then you swing your sword at one of these orcs, but he doesn't get hit by the sword. He just catches it. He's like, oh no, you don't, Ranger! And it turns out there's another orc captain just in the crowd getting ready to kill you, and maybe he does kill you. You were like dead set on assassinating this one guy, some other captain kills you, becomes your nemesis, and you go hunt him down. A former Joystiq staffer, Stephen Wong, wrote on Facebook the other day that he encountered a captain that one of his traits was shows up unexpectedly. And later, and then I guess he leaves him alone, doesn't kill him, and later on in the game he's fighting some other captain, and sure enough, this guy just comes out of nowhere, like to come kill him. But I don't remember if he actually killed him or not. But like that's the stuff that's like magical, or like Alexander talked about in his review, like this one guy that you were supposed to kill, and then you wind up not doing it because a Caragor eats him instead, and you don't even get the credit for it. Like it's those water cooler moments that make the game so neat.
Mm.
I as part of my last comment, if I were to describe Mordor to somebody who's never played the game, I would say it's the best Batman game that has nothing to do with Batman. It superficially feels a lot like the like Arkham City and Arkham Asylum, except the combat is more difficult, and as a result of that difficulty, it's more satisfying when you're successful.
Yeah.
And B, the combat, visceral is such an overused word, but the way that some of these orcs are killed is really, really brutal and very satisfying as a result. If you've been tracking this guy and he's killed you 3 times, when you finally stab him 6 times and then decapitate him, it's so good.
I mean, in defense of your word choice, I mean, there are literal viscera.
Yeah, exactly.
That's part of what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for me, I think it's a better. It has those moments in it that you wish Assassin's Creed had. I mean, those moments of the unexpected happening everything in Assassin's Creed is so telegraphed. The only stories you can kind of tell is, oh, how did you kill that guy? Oh, I did this, and that's pretty much it. There's no shock, there's no awe to it. It's very straightforward. It's very linear, and you do have choices, but there are so many unexpected turns that can happen in this game where you're fighting a small pack of bad guys, and all of a sudden you don't realize that one of them broke off and like sounded a horn, and now 50 guys are on your butt.
Right.
Now 3 captains are there too, and you are going to die unless you run out of there. But you don't want to run out of there because you have a great combo chain going. And then all of a sudden this one little thing you wanted to accomplish is destroyed, and all of the people you've killed have been promoted or replaced because you've died the one time. And I think that's what's amazing about it. It's funny that it's compared to Batman. There's some rumor that this was at one point a Batman license game, but then it was shifted to this other license. And it reminds me a little bit of what EA attempted to do with Batman Begins, that fear system.
The fear system, oh my god.
Of where Batman is sort of intimidating people, and there's some intimidation in this too. And I like the traits, and I like how it's not, I mean, every orc is basically cannon fodder, but when it comes to the captains and the chiefs, they have very specific personalities. And I think that's what's really great about it, because it puts a name and a face, and these people, it's a nemesis system because you hate that guy who keeps killing you, who keeps getting promoted, and you want that person dead, and you hunt that specific person. And that's something that you don't see in a lot of games. It reminds me of like when you play Skyrim and you walk into a random cave and this amazing story comes out of it. That's what I really like about Shadow of Mordor.
It's unlike Assassin's Creed, you know. You're not like assassinating some fat Italian banker. You're assassinating someone who like you have emotions about.
Yeah. Who's wearing a giant flaming torch crown
on his head?
On his head.
Who's also afraid of fire, by the way. That happened to me.
The best thing about that is like it's like the most in-your-face way of saying you can't vault over this guy because there's actual fire coming out of his head.
Right.
Everybody, that's it for this. Go if you have any other questions about Shadow of Mordor and are still wondering after the past hour if you should play this game. Go to joystiq.com. That's joystiq.com, just like you see it there in the corner of the screen, and read Alexander's review. It is very, very fun, and it's an excellent game. If you have been enjoying this, stick around, because literally we are going to be live again in just about 5 minutes with Drive Club for PlayStation 4. Ludwig and Nex have been playing the finished version, the retail edition of Drive Club, and then we're going to be showing it off if you want to see that racing game. Stay here, and thank you for coming out, everybody. Guys, thank you for doing this.
Yeah. And hey, don't forget, we have the archive of our Shadows of Mordor live stream as well, if you want to actually just watch the game.
Yeah. Boom Boom Turkey Head, any final thoughts?
No. I mean, I'm going to go play the game. It keeps me employed. I like that.
I love that Alexander put a tie on for this, but then also put a turkey head on.
He's a classy man.
Boom Boom Turkey Head, any thoughts on Kevin Smith's new film Tusk?
Uh-oh, you broke him.
That's it.
You broke him.
Somebody
We'll see you
reboot
in
the
a few
turkey.
minutes, everybody. Just a few minutes. Bye.
Later.